You cannot remember being a baby. You know you were one. You have seen the photos. Someone has probably told you stories about your first words, your first steps, the funny things you did before you could even speak. But you cannot remember any of it yourself, not a single moment. And the strange thing is, nobody can. No matter how smart you are, no matter how good your memory is today, your first few years of life are completely gone. Most people assume babies just don't think very much, so there's nothing worth remembering. But the real answer is far stranger. Your brain was building itself, and it had to destroy the past to do it. This is called childhood amnesia, and it might be one of the most surprising things your brain has ever done to you. Think about it. You were not empty when you were a baby. You were learning constantly. Every single day your brain was taking in new sounds, new faces, new feelings, new information about how the world works. Babies learn faster than almost any other time in life. So why can't you remember any of it? The answer starts with a tiny part of your brain called the hippocampus. Neuroscientist Paul Frankland at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto has spent years studying this question. His research found something surprising. In babies and very young children, the hippocampus, which is the part of your brain that saves long-term memories, is still being built. New brain cells are growing inside it at a very fast speed. And this is exactly the problem. When new cells grow into the hippocampus, they break the connections that old memories were stored in. It is like writing something important on a piece of paper, and then someone keeps adding new lines all over it until you cannot read what you wrote anymore. The new growth does not erase your memories on purpose. It just overwrites them by accident. So your earliest memories were not lost because nothing important happened. They were lost because your brain was growing too fast to hold on to them. Here is where it gets even more interesting. Researcher Patricia Bauer at Emory University found that young children actually can form memories. If you show a 2-year-old something interesting and ask them about it a few weeks later, they can often tell you what happened. The memory is there, but a few years later, even that memory is gone. The children do not forget what they learned. They forget the specific moments in which they learned it. This tells us something important. Childhood amnesia is not about whether memories are formed. It is about whether they survive long enough to reach your adult brain. And there is another reason why early memories are so hard to keep. Psychologist Katherine Nelson studied something called the narrative self. This is a fancy way of saying that humans remember things much better when they can turn them into a story. We remember events not just as raw feelings or pictures, but as a kind of personal story where we are the main character. The problem is, babies and very young children do not yet have the language to build these stories. They have not yet learned the words for emotions, for time, for past and future. Without language, there is no story, and without a story, memories fade much faster. Think about your earliest memory right now. Most adults say their first clear memory happened around the age of 3 to 3.5. And researchers have found this is true across many different countries and cultures. Something shifts around that age. Language gets stronger, the sense of self gets clearer, and suddenly, memories start to stick. But here is the twist almost nobody expects. The age at which your earliest memory begins is not the same for everyone, and the difference may come from your culture. Psychologist Qi Wang at Cornell University compared the earliest memories of people from the United States and China. She found that American adults tend to remember things from an earlier age than Chinese adults, and their early memories tend to focus more on themselves, their own feelings, their own role in the story. Chinese adults, on the other hand, tended to have slightly later first memories, with more focus on the group, the family, the shared moment, rather than the personal one. This suggests that the stories your family told you about yourself when you were young, and the way your culture thinks about personal history, actually help shape which memories your brain decides to keep. Your first memory is not just something that happened to you. It is also something that was partly built for you, by the language around you and the stories people told. So think about what this means. You were there for all of it. Your first steps, your first word, the first time you laughed, or cried, or felt something that mattered. You lived every moment of your first years, but the brain you had then was too young and too busy growing to save those moments for the brain you have now. In a way, the person who lived your first years of life and the person reading this right now are almost like two different people. One experienced everything, the other remembers nothing. But the first person is the reason the second person exists at all. Every word you know, every emotion you can name, every basic skill that feels so natural you never think about it, all of that was learned during the years you cannot remember. The lessons stayed, the memories did not. So the next time someone shows you a photo of yourself as a baby, looking up at the world with wide, curious eyes, remember this. That baby was not empty. That baby was learning everything, building a brain capable of one day thinking about why it cannot remember anything. You cannot remember being a baby, but everything you are today started right there in the years you have completely forgotten.